I knew something was off when my badge didn't scan at the East Dock gate. Red light, two chirps, nothing. My morning coffee still steaming in the cup holder, my inbox still full of overnight alerts. Routing delays through Louisville, a snow squall forming near Flagstaff, two late trucks crawling toward Omaha, but I was stuck outside a building I'd kept running like a heartbeat for 14 straight years. A security guard, kid couldn't be older than 25, came over, earpiece blinking like he was in the goddamn Secret Service. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to wait here. I've been told someone from upstairs is coming down." Upstairs. That's what they called the 12th floor now, since the buyout, since everything started getting rebranded and restructured and reimagined, except the part where actual freight moved. If you're still listening before this really kicks off, take 2 seconds to hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of y'all tune in but forget to do it, and honestly, it keeps this whole storytelling train rolling down the track. Anyway, 14 damn years of silence, sweat, and sleepless reroutes. I didn't work for praise. I didn't work for the sales team's fake applause when they landed a deal my system would make possible. I worked because I knew exactly what it took to move 6,000 trucks from coast to coast without one of them ending up in a ditch, a customs deadlock, or a goddamn FEMA reroute during hurricane season. I built the entire routing logic from scratch. No blueprint. Just experience, caffeine, and a whiteboard in a windowless room behind dispatch. I remember sitting on the floor at 1 a.m. after the 2015 Midwest freeze shut down half the interstates, manually rerouting lanes with nothing but weather radio and 3 open laptops. We hit every drop, every single one. The founder, Dave Connolly, real old-school logistics guy, sharp as hell in flannel and steel toes, walked into my cube the next morning and said, "If the wheels roll, you roll with them." That was it. My raise didn't hit until 4 months later, and even then, it was a quiet bump in payroll with no speech, no plaque. Just a line item and a nod. And I was fine with that. I didn't need my face on the wall. I needed control. Uptime. Precision. I didn't chase praise, I chased zero-error days. The real wins were in the absences. No panicked calls, no flags from customs, no 3 a.m. texts from the Gulf when some tropical storm decided to change her mind mid-route. But all that loyalty, all that backbone, none of it meant a damn thing once the company got sold. The new regime came in wearing tailored denim and startup grins. Connor Lance, the so-called logistics visionary from some VC darling in Palo Alto, strutted into the warehouse floor 2 weeks after the acquisition, like he was unveiling the cure for cancer, not repackaging freight into buzzwords. He called it Logistics 2.0. I called it theft, wrapped in Helvetica and sold back to us like we were lucky to be included. He never looked me in the eye. Not once. Called me the ops gal in a meeting I wasn't even supposed to be left out of. Tried to make jokes about the Midwest being one big corn maze while I was rebuilding the reroute algorithm to compensate for a bridge collapse outside Peoria. Still, I kept my head down, kept the system online, kept trucks moving while Connor took credit for numbers I was hand-feeding him from the back end. Then I started noticing little things. Legal brushing off my quarterly check-ins, invoices for the routing module sitting unpaid. Portlock, the shell company I'd created back in 2016 to license the software, getting fewer renewal pings. They were slipping, letting things expire, assuming I was part of the furniture too worn in to matter. That's when I knew it was coming. So I stopped reminding them. I stopped forwarding the renewal clauses. I let the clock tick. The contract would auto-expire at midnight on March 1st. And without an active license, they'd be squatting on IP they didn't own. It wasn't just software, it was patented logic, filed and granted under my name, wrapped in legal protections like a freight nerd's version of Fort Knox. The day they fired me, it was raining. Of course it was. A slow, mean Ohio drizzle that makes everything look like a funeral in progress. I stepped into the boardroom, hair damp, boots squeaking. Connor didn't even look up, just flipped a page in his stupid designer folder. "We're going lean," he said, like he was doing me a favor. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I'd already moved the queen off the board. And he didn't even know the game had started. The legal intern didn't even spell my name right in the reply. Said something like, "Please be advised, per standard employment terms, all systems developed in course of salaried engagement are property of Summit Freight Holdings." They CC'd some VP I'd never met and slapped urgent in the subject line like that made it official. I read it twice, closed the laptop, and just laughed. Not a full laugh, more like a dry exhale through the nose. because they thought I'd built all that on company time, on company servers, under company guidance. They thought I was stupid enough to tie my life's work to a place that once handed out gas cards as Christmas bonuses. But let's rewind. Back in 2016, I watched a convoy of 18-wheelers get flagged at Port of Newark because some fresh out-of-college customs agent decided our cargo routing didn't match expected behavioral patterns. Translation? My system was too efficient. Too fast, they thought it looked suspicious. 5 trucks detained, 9 delivery timelines screwed, 1 screaming client in Cincinnati threatening to pull their $6.2 million contract. That night, sitting in a cheap motel outside Jersey with a laptop on my knees and a headache that could crack asphalt, I realized something. I needed insulation, legal distance, ownership separation. So I registered Portlock Solutions on a domain I paid for myself. Quiet little LLC, no office, no nameplate. Just a digital fence between me and the next idiot who thought automated customs pre-flagging was witchcraft. Over the next 2 years, I migrated every major update of the routing logic into Portlock's proprietary ecosystem. Not all at once. Bit by bit. Core lane code, weather integrations, auto reallocations based on axle weight. All protected, all documented. I wasn't stealing from the company, I was protecting the system from them. I'd seen too many directors try to streamline by cutting the very thing that kept them profitable. Summit didn't mind. Not when everything worked. They signed the initial license agreement in 2018, probably without reading past page 2. Quarterly fees, silent renewals, a neat little clause that let them operate as long as they paid on time and left my code the hell alone. For 5 years they did, like clockwork. No issues, no questions. Every time the license came up for quiet renewal, their accounting system pinged the autopay. Done. But when the new execs rolled in, they let it lapse. March 1st came and went. No payment, no ping, no renewal. And I didn't say a word, because I'd been documenting every login attempt, every instance of the routing dashboard pinging my servers, every user still accessing my logic as if nothing had changed. I had timestamps, IP addresses, and full activity logs. I even recorded a screen capture of their dispatch manager using the system in real time. 7 days after the contract died. It was like watching someone throw a dinner party in a house they didn't know had been foreclosed. And still, I kept quiet. Because the longer they used it, the deeper the breach. And the deeper the breach, the higher the enforcement penalty. It wasn't personal yet, just business. And frankly, I wanted to see how far they'd go before realizing the floor beneath them wasn't theirs. The funny part? They still thought they were in control. Still scheduling optimization meetings, still funneling root audits through Portlock's backend like the license hadn't expired. They even sent a cheerful company-wide memo titled Spring Efficiency Push, signed by Connor himself, bragging about the proprietary AI logic driving our industry best delivery rates. My logic, my system, my name on the patent, filed 2 years ago, granted last fall. Tucked away in the USPTO database under Portlock Solutions, LLC. I'd even had it notarized on my birthday. Just a little gift to myself. Who needs flowers when you can legally own the backbone of a national logistics chain? So when I asked legal for that IP confirmation, just a formality, mind you, I already knew what they'd say. But I needed it on record. I needed the arrogance. I needed the receipts. Because in exactly 3 weeks, when the takedown letters went out, the fines hit 6 digits and the screens went dark, they wouldn't be able to say it was a misunderstanding. They'd be able to scroll back, open that email, and see exactly where they laughed off the one woman who built the system they couldn't live without. And they'd realize, too late, that I wasn't asking for permission. I was setting the trap. He said it like he was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful he gave me a private room to be discarded in, instead of just locking me out of the system and letting security haul me out the side door like expired inventory. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my mortgage and a tie that looked like it had never known the concept of sweat. Everything about Connor Lance screamed performance, right down to the stupid gold cufflinks shaped like miniature semis. I bet he thought it was clever. Logistics man with truck jewelry, real Wall Street clown pretending to understand back-end freight. He didn't even offer a seat, just motioned to one across from him with a tight-lipped smirk and that dumb folder already open in front of him. He flipped pages like he was reading a script he hadn't bothered to rehearse. Page 3. That's where the line was, I guess. The corporate guillotine. Effective immediately, your role is redundant. We're restructuring toward a leaner digital ops framework, and we'll be phasing out legacy roles that no longer align with our forward roadmap. I wish I could tell you I felt something dramatic in that moment. Rage, heartbreak, some big cinematic swell of emotion. I didn't. All I felt was this cold, dry amusement, like I was watching a toddler try to hotwire a truck, like he had no idea the depth of what he'd just pulled the pin on. He held out the envelope. My badge inside. One final act of corporate theater. Please hand over all system access credentials, local admin permissions, remote dashboards, VPN tokens, anything tied to the Portlock routing framework. I stared at him for maybe 3 seconds, long enough for the room to go quiet, long enough for that little twitch at the corner of his mouth to start. He thought I didn't hear him, or maybe that I was going to cry. Instead, I pushed the envelope back across the table, slid it toward him like a poker chip I didn't need anymore. I can't give you what you're asking for. He blinked, actually blinked like I'd short-circuited his internal script. Why not? I leaned back slightly, just enough to breathe. Because it was never yours to take. He didn't get it, not yet. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out if I was being difficult or if he'd missed a clause somewhere in HR's offboarding manual. He glanced down at the folder again, as if there'd be a note from legal saying, "Warning, this one bites." The silence dragged on long enough that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Let me be clear," he said finally, his voice low and clipped. "This isn't a negotiation. You're being terminated. We need full systems handoff immediately. If you're implying you won't cooperate—" "I'm not implying anything," I interrupted. "I'm stating a legal fact. The routing system is not owned by Summit Freight. It was licensed through a third-party vendor. You might have heard of them. Portlock Solutions." His jaw tightened. "Portlock is your LLC." Now he was catching up. "It is," I said. "And your last automatic renewal lapsed in March, meaning you've been using proprietary technology without a valid license for, let's see, 72 days. He went still. I could hear the air vent above us hum, the kind of silence you only get in rooms where people start realizing the floor is about to fall out from under them. "This meeting's over," he snapped. I stood, calm, slow. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out a single folded page, a printout. Portlock's legal notice, already emailed, already timestamped. This was just a courtesy copy. I laid it gently on the table like you'd set down a clean knife. "You'll want to start with Clause 7.4b, I said, my voice steady. "That covers hourly breach escalation, retroactive from March 1st. He didn't touch it, didn't speak, just stared at the paper like it had personally insulted his ancestors. Then I turned and walked out. No one stopped me, no escort, no security guard, no dramatic shouting in the hallway, just me, one woman in a raincoat, heading to the elevator like she was leaving a dentist appointment. The system was still online. For now. But I'd already cut the countdown loose. And Connor? He just fired the only person who knew how to stop the clock. The first red flag came in the form of a reply all. Someone from the compliance team, an overworked guy named Marcus, who once asked me how to sort by column in Excel, forwarded Portlock's cease and desist to the entire executive thread with the subject line, "Is this real?" 3 question marks, all caps panic, and the kind of immediate silence that only happens when every suit in the building realizes they forgot to read something they signed. The email hit their inbox at exactly 12:04 p.m. Eastern. By 12:07, I had read receipts from 4 directors, 1 assistant GC, and, bless her, Stephanie in finance, who'd always had a good head on her shoulders and a healthy distrust of men with brushed leather portfolios. The attachments weren't dramatic. No threats, no shouting, just clean, dry documentation like a stack of loaded pistols, each with a name etched into the grip. Original license agreement, signed 2017, updated 2023. Clause 3.1a, ownership retained by Portlock Solutions. Clause 4.6, termination upon non-payment. Clause 7.4b, breach fees accrue at 11th 600 hour past expiry. Screenshots, time-stamped logins into the routing system on April 6th, 9th, 12th, 14th. Invoices, 3 unpaid, all marked past due in red. Formal DMCA notice with digital fingerprint IDs of every proprietary module still in use. The last line from Portlock's legal team said it all. Please consider this your final notice prior to full enforcement of access restrictions. That restriction took effect at 1:43 p.m. on the dot. I wasn't there, obviously, but I've heard enough from former colleagues and seen enough LinkedIn chaos since to piece together the scene. The main ops floor, buzzing with dispatch chatter and clattering keyboards, fell quiet in waves. Monitors froze. One by one, terminals flashed a red border, then blinked to a black screen with a simple error code. PL RX7, license invalid, no warning, no fade out, just gone. Someone screamed. That part made me laugh. Their fallback? A dusty SharePoint link to an Excel file last updated in Q3 of 2018. It was meant to be a backup plan, but calling it that would be like calling a hamster wheel a power grid. The file still listed a bridge that collapsed 4 years ago as active, and one of the tabs was locked by a former intern who'd long since left for law school. Dispatchers panicked. Phones lit up like a Christmas tree in hell. Routes disappeared mid-cycle. Drivers called in from New Mexico, Florida, Wyoming. My route map's gone. I got a delivery window, but no load. What's my drop address again? Manual entry resumed. Slowly, awkwardly, people who hadn't touched a freight manifest by hand in years tried to remember how to assign lanes without automation. It was like watching surgeons try to operate with butter knives and a fogged-up mirror. Orders were missed. Delays stacked up. By 4 p.m., one of their largest retail contracts had already filed a performance complaint. By 6 p.m., 2 refrigerated loads in Phoenix were left sitting too long at temp, $500,000 in spoiled inventory. And that was just day one. No one outside the company knew what had happened yet. But inside, it was panic. Quiet, expensive panic. Connor, I'm told, tried to spin it. Blamed an unexpected technical regression in the system upgrade cycle, tossed around words like legacy glitch and temporary misalignment in Slack threads he didn't know I still had access to. Meanwhile, Portlock's legal inbox was receiving hourly breach logs, automatically generated by every unauthorized system ping. The clock was ticking, and every second they stayed online was another bill. No escape clause, no grace period, just a cliff. And they'd already driven off it, waving their NDA like a parachute that wasn't attached to anything. They brought in outside consultants before sunrise. I heard from someone who still owed me a favor in IT. Apparently, 3 guys with startup hoodies and overpriced sneakers rolled into the server room at 5:12 a.m., carrying lattes and egos like they were there to perform a goddamn exorcism. One of them actually said, "We'll have this back online in a few hours. We've done harder recoveries." That was before they realized the system didn't want to be found. Connor called it a digital reboot task force, like slapping a cool name on panic made it a plan. He stood in the middle of the war room, sleeves rolled up like he was personally about to code the solution, barking words like containerization, reverse DNS mapping, and zero latency failover, none of which applied to a system he didn't understand and never owned. See, the brilliance of Portlock wasn't just the code. It was the infrastructure. I'd built it to be untouchable, modular, decentralized. Each region had its own node, one in Ohio, one in Reno, another tucked quietly into an agricultural data center in Kansas where no one ever looked. 2 more across the border in Vancouver and Monterey, masked through vendor-neutral hosting contracts. The whole thing stitched together through redundancy protocols and uptime trackers run by independent firms. No one point of failure, no master switch they could flip. And every time someone tried to poke around inside, every diagnostic ping, every attempt to brute force credentials, logged, stamped, bundled, forwarded to my legal team like an overnight Amazon order, gift wrapped with breach timestamps. By Tuesday afternoon, their firewall logs looked like Christmas lights gone haywire. Red, 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 breach, violation, unauthorized attempt, escalation. Portlock's servers responded exactly as designed. No emotion, no noise, just clean escalation. Clause 7.4b made it simple. Each hour of unauthorized use or attempted access post-license termination incurs a fee of $11,600 USD. Calculated in cumulative intervals retroactive to the date of first breach, March 1st. Every login, every screen refresh, every botched attempt to clone or mirror the system without authorization, ka-ching. By Wednesday, Connor was sitting on a pile of liability north of $130,000 and climbing. Someone tried to pause the breach counter by unplugging a node. didn't work. Each node ran its own heartbeat check through a third-party server under escrow monitoring. Disabling one didn't stop the others. It just flagged attempted concealment and triggered another fee tier. My lawyer emailed them a gentle reminder. Clause 7.5. Willful obfuscation or data tampering, 28,000 event. That silence you hear? That was the collective sound of their compliance team going pale. I later found out they tried rebuilding the system from scratch. Like you could just recreate 10 years of iterative freight routing logic with a few GitHub plugins and a dream. They hired a contract team out of Austin. Smart kids, I'll give them that. They ran the diagnostics, saw the node architecture, and allegedly told Connor, "This isn't a rebuild, it's a recovery mission in a minefield." The best part? Portlock sent daily summaries. 1 page, time-based billable breaches, neatly broken down by region and access type. Unauthorized query, internal, 3:17 a.m. 11/11, $600. Attempted node ping, Western region, 4:41 a.m. 11/7, $1,600. DMCA violation, route preview render, 6:02 a.m. 11/11, $1,600. Every attempt to fix it cost them more. Every tech hero they brought in just made the tab longer. They didn't know it yet, but they were already bleeding out. And all Connor had left were buzzwords and a whiteboard slowly filling with numbers he couldn't stop. They found it buried in the digital graveyard, 6 folders deep inside the General Counsel's shared drive, hidden in a backlog batch of automated renewal clears. It wasn't even marked urgent, just another contract rubber-stamped during their spring compliance audit the year before. But it was there. Page 9 of the Portlock license renewal, executed in full. Signed, time-stamped, legally binding, and right at the top of the signature box, Connor Lance, blue DocuSign squiggle and all. By then, their legal department had gone from curious to frantic. Every mid-level associate was ripping through PDF archives like they were defusing a bomb and didn't know which wire to cut. I imagine the moment hit like a punch to the sternum. One of the interns, God bless interns, finally opened the original patent filing from 2017. Application number US 16-549,229. Patent title, System and Method for Adaptive Routing and Predictive Delay Mitigation in Freight Logistics. Assignee, Portlock Solutions, LLC. Inventor, Emily Ray Mallory, my name in black and white, filed through a private attorney in Dayton who knew how to tuck patents into tight corners without triggering alarm bells. The date it was granted? February 2nd, 2021, 3 years before the firestorm. A full year before Connor even joined Summit. He hadn't just stepped into a legal minefield. He'd practically danced across it, waving a torch. And the renewal? It included a clause that would have stopped this entire fiasco cold, if he had actually read it. Section 4.3b. Licensee acknowledges that all rights, title, and interest in the underlying IP remain the sole property of the licensor, Portlock Solutions, including, but not limited to, patented methodologies, routing architecture, predictive delay logic, and adaptive forecast mechanisms. Plain English, he admitted it wasn't theirs. On record, with a signature. His signature. The real kicker was the auto-renewal batch. Every March, compliance would push out a standard DocuSign package with all the vendor renewals in one go. Half the execs signed blindly. Connor signed his in under 3 minutes. No red lines, no notes, just another checkbox on a to-do list he didn't understand. And that clause, 4.3b, wasn't hidden. It wasn't fine print. It was bolded, underlined, and written in clean, legally idiot-proof language. He had no one to blame but himself. From what I was told, the moment that realization sank in, he got quiet. Real quiet. The usual bark went flat. No more synergy or digital redundancy talk, just silence punctuated by the slow ticking of a clock they no longer controlled. I imagine he stared at that screen for a long time, watching his own name hover next to mine, linked forever by a dotted line of liability. He fired the person who held the keys, and in doing so, he locked himself out of the entire house. When the board asked what happened, legal gave them the short version. Portlock's IP is protected by an active U.S. patent, assigned prior to acquisition. It was acknowledged in last year's renewal, which was executed by Connor Lance. The breach fees are enforceable. Ownership is not disputable. Council advises immediate resolution. No argument, no appeal, just the slow, sinking acknowledgement that their golden boy had stepped on a landmine and dragged the whole company with him. They say he didn't go back to his office, just walked out of the conference room, straight into the elevator, and disappeared into the parking garage. Left the folder on the table, didn't say a word. Because really, what was there left to say? The email hit my inbox at 8:17 a.m., tucked between a Groupon for dental whitening and an auto confirmation from Petco. Subject line: let's talk transition options. That emoji, that damn emoji, was the cherry on top. Like we were old pals grabbing brunch after a yoga class, not two people on opposite sides of a legal firestorm he lit with his own damn match. Connor's message was polished, soft around the edges, clearly run through some PR software for tone optimization. It opened with a gentle acknowledgement of recent operational turbulence, followed by a proposal for a short-term consulting retainer to ensure a smooth transition, minimize vendor-client friction, and identify a collaborative path forward beneficial to all parties. He even tried to slip in a compliment, said my unique insight and deep infrastructure fluency would be invaluable in helping them rebuild. Translation? He wanted me to clean up his mess for a fraction of what it would cost to own it. I didn't respond. I didn't even forward it to my lawyer. I just starred it, screenshotted it for the records, and let it rot. My attorney handled the rest. By noon, Connor had a formal PDF in his inbox from Portlock's legal counsel. Title: Termination Consequences, Portlock Enforcement Timetable. The language was clinical, detached, ruthlessly polite. Per Clause 7.4b, the current breach total, including hourly escalation, retroactive charges, and data access violations, stands at $348,200. Should unauthorized use continue, billing will proceed at the documented rate. Please reference Appendix B for itemized incidents and projected accumulation over the next 72 hours. They attached a live tracker link, not for him to edit, just to watch the numbers rise, every hour, on the hour. Connor tried calling my cell, once, twice. He left a voicemail on the third try. Hey, Emily, look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd really like to talk this through one-on-one, without legal, just human to human. I know you built something incredible. Let's be smart about this. I didn't delete it. I just forwarded the audio file to my lawyer and added it to the incident folder under attempted side channel contact, 0519. Then I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, sat back in my kitchen, and opened the Portlock dashboard. The billing ticker clicked past $368,000 while I watched. No calls, no meetings, just billing. I'd told them, calmly, clearly, and without malice, that the system wasn't theirs to take. They didn't listen. Now they were going to pay for every keystroke they stole. They called it a strategic continuity discussion, like giving the fire a different name made the building less burned. Monday morning, 7th floor boardroom, frosted glass, filtered air, and the kind of sterile conference coffee that tastes like printer ink and regret. Everyone was there except Connor. His seat was empty, no nameplate, no excuses. Legal sat tight-lipped in one corner, finance flanked the projector, and the CIO looked like he hadn't slept since Thursday. I had someone on the inside, Stephanie from finance, who texted me 3 words before the meeting even ended. It got ugly. They started with the losses. No sugarcoating. 83 hours of system downtime. Missed delivery windows across 6 major retailers. Spoiled perishable loads in Arizona, Texas, and Georgia. 2 clients had already pulled contracts. Another threatened litigation for breach of SLA. Estimated client-side loss, $12.4 million. And then came slide 3. The projector clicked, and up came the title, Portlock Enforcement Timeline, watermarked, time-stamped, legally binding, a daily breakdown of escalating breach fees starting from March 1st, now sitting at $412,000 and climbing. Each entry cross-referenced with its own server logs, pings, access attempts, and failed login bursts from every regional node. One director coughed. Another swore under his breath. The CFO walked through it like he was giving a weather report from the middle of a hurricane. Voice flat, hands shaking just enough to notice. We are currently under active financial penalty for unauthorized use of a licensed, patented system. Ownership has been confirmed as external. Renewal documentation was signed internally last year, acknowledging Portlock's IP. We We did not renew. Silence. Dead silence. Then someone near the end of the table finally asked the question everyone was thinking. Why did we fire the one person who owned the system? Legal shifted. The CIO tried to speak, failed, then reached for his water. Finally, the chief legal officer said it, quiet and cold. He didn't tell us he owned it. A younger director, not new but newer, looked up and blinked like someone just hit him with a 2x4. Did anyone ask? Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't settle. It spreads, like mold in the drywall. Turns out nobody had asked. Nobody had thought to. Connor assumed. HR followed the assumption. Legal never verified because they never imagined someone that essential could also be that independent. They thought I was an employee. They didn't realize I'd been a vendor for 9 years, that my system wasn't housed in their infrastructure, wasn't governed by their IT policies, wasn't touched by their internal IP clauses, because no one asked, because nobody bothered to look at the renewal packet before signing it, because Connor believed a woman who wore steel toes and worked from the 3rd floor couldn't possibly hold the most powerful piece of infrastructure in the entire company. Stephanie said it was the quietest boardroom she'd ever seen. No one raised their voice. No one argued. They just sat there, staring at the projected bill ticking up by the hour, like they were watching the meter on their own execution. Connor never came back. Officially? Stepped down for personal reasons. Unofficially? He was already gone, before the board even saw the full cost of the assumption he made. And me? I was home, barefoot, watching the storm from the outside, sipping coffee from a mug that said, "She who builds the map decides where it goes." They paid on Friday at 4:26 p.m. Eastern. Wire confirmation hit our firm's escrow account like a final period at the end of a very long, very stupid sentence. Full amount, no negotiations, no installment plan, and yes, interest included. A courtesy, really, one that cost them an extra $28,400 for the delay. The transfer came with no email, no call, not even a legal footnote of apology, just silence and surrender. Connor, by then, was a ghost. Exited for personal reasons was the official line, circulated in an internal memo drafted by HR and approved by legal. I managed to get a copy forwarded to me by someone whose kid I once helped get a summer internship. It was 3 sentences long. The last one said, "We thank Mr. Lance for his leadership during a period of rapid transformation." I nearly spit out my coffee. They didn't hold a goodbye party, didn't even announce it in the company Slack. Just scrubbed his credentials from the org chart and locked his email. As far as Summit Freight was concerned, Connor Lance never happened. But I did. And so did Portlock. By Monday, the system was back online. Officially, legally, under new terms, a Portlock premium licensing agreement with a 3-year lock-in and a 19% rate increase across the board. No discounts, no grandfathering, they didn't even blink. Every user who logged into the dispatch dashboard that morning was greeted by a new gray footer at the bottom of the screen. Nothing flashy, just 12 words, centered in Helvetica, licensed via Portlock IP Holdings, designed by E.R. Mallory, all rights reserved. No one questioned it, no one tried to remove it. They couldn't, because I'd built the control layer myself. Embedded deep in the architecture was a non-negotiable watermark protocol, code-signed and validated against a remote server I controlled. Every login pinged my key, every update required my approval. The system wasn't just leased, it was leashed. They didn't own it, they operated inside it. Under terms I defined, monitored by audit logs I controlled, with every node heartbeat reporting directly back to Portlock's compliance team. And if they ever tried to tinker again? Clause 9.2 was waiting. The nuclear clause. The one nobody dared ask about now. No press release was issued. No industry memo, no proud announcement on LinkedIn. Summit didn't want the world to know how close they came to catastrophe over a licensing assumption and a designer folder. They kept it quiet. Contained. But inside those walls, every director, every manager, every intern now knew the truth. The trucks were moving again not because of Summit's leadership or vision or synergy. They were moving because I allowed it, and because I owned every bolt of the system under their wheels. People think revenge is loud. They imagine shouting, public firings, drama, lawsuits, headlines. But real control? Real revenge? It's quiet. It's a login screen no one can change. It's a gray footer they have to see every single day. And it's the silence after a mistake so large, nobody ever talks about it again. Because now, when they look at that system, the one they thought they could steal, what they see is me. And they know better than to forget it.